Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from France, continuing Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Friday night slate here to end this week of this NBA regular season, Nate, with a pretty big slate here. We're going to be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks taking on Minnesota on the road in this one. 6 straight home games for the Bucks that they won all of them. So we're going to be looking at some road stats for them, probably harkening back to last year a bit to find some of those, but plenty to talk about in this one. Also have another game video and our player props video up for you today. Want to make sure to like and subscribe so you can continue to follow along with us each and every weekday of this regular season. Also head to thelines.com. That's where we have our great written content up for you guys all season long, and our odds finder tool where you can go ahead and make sure that you are shopping these lines to the best of your ability across U.S. sportsbooks this NBA season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this slate for Friday night and get into the Milwaukee and Minnesota game right after.
Yeah, we're back to a huge slate after a pretty weak Thursday night slate there from the NBA. And I took the opportunity to put up our first power rankings and MVP updates up on thelines.com. A little off day there, so check those out. Running through the lines here, though, tons of games. We got Miami minus 3.5 at Indy, and we will break that game down for you in a separate video. The Knicks are plus 2.5 at Philly. Cavs minus 6 at the Pistons. Huge discrepancy in terms of where they are in the power ratings. Brooklyn plus 3 at Washington. Going to wait and see how they play second game without Nash here. Bulls are plus 7 at the Celtics. Interesting one there. The Clippers minus 4.5 at the Spurs. Hornets are plus 11 at Memphis, who should have Ja and Bane back there. Golden State on a back-to-back. They lost in Orlando last night. Plus 4 at the Pellies, trying to get off the schneid on the road there. I kind of wanted to take the Raptors here, plus 3.5. They're getting a little steam after just pummeling their last two opponents, but they're at Dallas, tough place to play.
Exactly.
And Luka is on a tear. Portland is plus 11 at Phoenix. Probably not going to get Dame back yet. The Jazz plus 2 at the Lakers, who don't look now have won 2 in a row. And the Bucks minus 3.5 right now at Mini. The key injury news to watch with Gobert and Anthony Edwards, both questionable due to illness. I kind of want both those guys to play, honestly, if I'm betting the Bucks. It's just one of those situations where you shake things up and Minnesota will probably be better right now because it's just it's a fit issue. It's what everyone was concerned about when you put Gobert next to Towns. You make Towns play power forward. He got absolutely roasted in his last game by Cam Johnson, who's not exactly a blow-by player. And now Giannis is coming to town. And you're going to put Cat on Giannis on the perimeter. Maybe he's a decent bet down low. Maybe you'll say, well, Giannis can't get to the rim with Rudy protecting it, right? Well, no, not correct. 32.5 points per game on 54% shooting his last 9 against Utah with Gobert down there. Milwaukee won that last game in Utah. They had struggled against Utah, but that's a completely different story situation. This Wolves team right now does not know how to play around Gobert. They don't have great defensive personnel, which we talked about when they played the Suns. They haven't played a good schedule at all. And then sure enough, couldn't beat the Suns despite a really good, their best defensive perimeter performance of the season. Holding Chris Paul, Devin Booker in check to a degree. But like I mentioned, Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges picked up the slack because the Wolves don't have wings, right? They traded all their wings for Gobert. They're just awful. They're either awful defensively when Gobert sits, or they're awful offensively when they can't get their spacing when Gobert's out there. If Ant's out, then D'Lo gets all of Drew Holiday to himself. That's not a good recipe for the offense. No. Even if Ant plays, he's not shooting well. He's apparently not in great shape coming into this season. The Wolves are shooting awful as a team, which was their secret sauce, if you will, last year. It was the reason they were able to score so much, and now they face the number 1 defense in the league. They're 6-2 to the under thus far. I think the under has to be in play here at 227. The Bucks have also been going under very consistently. They're lacking offense without Middleton, Ingles, Connaughton. So that's their path to victory. And I expect Giannis to hold it down on both ends of the floor here. It is their first road game in a long time, and they don't have to go very far. So rest should not be much of an issue.
Yeah, a little border war of sorts here, but not really a rivalry, just more of the narrative between these two teams. Last bunch of times they've played is Giannis owns this team. So the last four, just dating back to last season at this point. Giannis versus them. Well, no, it's the last two seasons. Apologies. Last four games, 36 points, 14 boards, 6 assists. Right, and we're talking about 67% from the field for Giannis. Rudy Gobert's there now, but like you said, last 9 versus Utah, still 32.5 points and 12 boards. So I'm not worried about that. We talk about no Chris Middleton, also no Pat Connaughton and no Joe Ingles, right? And that's a big deal for this team and normally would be. And it's definitely the reason that I continue to like unders with them. But Drew's stepped up. He's at 20 points a game, which is, it's right around where you want him to be. If you're not going to have Chris Middleton in there, he can get away with 17 a game or so when Chris is on the floor. But he's stepped up, his offense enough. Bobby Portis averaging a double-double, and Brook Lopez, ho-hum 15 points a game, 7 boards, 3 blocks, and he's shooting 35% from the field on 7 attempts. So he's getting them a couple threes and knocking down, keeping people honest as he stretches the offense. And Giannis is just doing MVP type stuff that maybe we don't want to give him that. We don't want to talk about that for him because of the fact that he had 2 in a row before Jokic, but he's kind of back on the on track here for what we're talking about with probably Tatum and Morant and then Luka, right? Who's the only player averaging more points than him with a higher usage rate than him. He's averaging 33.5 on about 37% usage rate. Like I said, Luka's close to 40. It's absolutely absurd what he's doing, but that's a separate, a conversation where maybe Luka finally is in line for an MVP. But with Giannis in this game as well, the fact that he controls everything the way he does on the road, his numbers do get a bit better from last season, especially this season. They've only had the one road game where they beat Philly to open up the season for them and then had 6 in a row at home, like we said. But if you go back to last season, 21-9 against the spread when they're an away favorite, and Giannis steps up his game, like I said, you can bet on him a little bit more. And his prop is at 33.5 points. I'm not touching it because I don't bet props above 33 when it comes to point totals. That's absolutely absurd. But it's not out of the question by any means with the usage rate at 28% and the way that they're spacing the floor for him specifically to allow him to continue to get in those lanes. I mean, if Minnesota is going to be, they've upped their defense. They're the 10th best defensive rating in the league. They still give up a ton of points because they play at such a fast pace, right? So the defensive rating might seem okay because compared to, with the amount of possessions they get per game, it's not that bad, but they're still giving up a ton of points. And most importantly, they're the second worst transition defense team. So the thought of Giannis barreling down the lane against them, against the second best, worst transition defense in the league kind of spells disaster for that team. And like you said, if Rudy's on the floor and Cat's on the floor, 103 offensive rating, man, that's not good enough no matter what your defense, no matter how much better they've gotten at defense. You can't win a playoff game, right? You're not going to be a playoff contender when you're shooting. So they got to figure that out because it's also crushing D'Lo. I mean, Cat is shooting the worst field goal percentage of his career. D'Lo is also shooting the worst field goal percentage and 3-point percentage of his career. It's just all a trickle down effect from the inside out. And so they're going to have to get that figured out. And I don't feel that confident in it right now. And I certainly feel very confident in it. Like you said, I'd rather have both of them on the floor so they can continue to muck things up in terms of Ant and Gobert. Keep them both in. It's not working, and I'd like to bet on Milwaukee. So I'm perfectly fine with no stars out in case that does mix something up in a way to jar something for them and get them back on track offensively. If they're not going to have that, and they actually do have these stars in, I still feel confident in what I've seen up to this point being the case tonight. So
yeah, be wary of the stars out, bets up phenomenon that we've seen plenty of times in the NBA, especially early in the season. If you count somebody out because they have important players out, they tend to overperform. Milwaukee, their defense has just been so good. I mean, Brook Lopez is an obvious reason for that improvement. I mean, he one of the most underrated rim protectors, really almost as good as Gobert in that sense. And they're allowing the 4th fewest paint points, fewest assists. Number 1, 2-point shooting. So when you talk about Minnesota's struggles from beyond the arc, I mean, where are they going to get their points here if they can't get to the rim against Lopez and Giannis, Giannis, by the way, 96 individual defensive rating. That's why he is slightly ahead of Luka, despite Luka's ridiculous offensive surge right now in the MVP voting. That is a very interesting race to watch, though, but we digress. I mean, it's just Milwaukee no longer just allowing certain guys to shoot threes, but maybe they do a little bit of that in this matchup, right? Because, I mean, other than Cat and Ant, who, if he's healthy, I think you're fine with anybody on Minnesota taking a three, right? I mean, they no longer have Malik Beasley. That is a huge loss for this offense. Pat Bev not there either to try and space the floor. The guys they bring off the bench are athletic slashers. They're not knockdown shooters either. So I would be really worried about Minnesota getting their points here, basically. And I mean, Milwaukee allowing 102 points per game. If you want to take the under on the Minnesota team total, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the under for the game also makes sense. Maybe you want to parlay that with the Bucks win.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it feels a little bit trappy with the 3 points, road, Milwaukee, blah, blah, blah. But the numbers still point to everything we're saying. And it also does come back to the 3-point shooting and the lack of 3-point defense from Minnesota. I mean, they're shooting in the top, 14 or so in terms of 3-point attempts a game and the 5th worst 3-point percentage, right? So they do have a large percentage of their points off of 2. Not great when you talk about Milwaukee's defense being in the top 5 in that column there defensively. So, yeah, all of this, Giannis's numbers, the defense that Milwaukee has played up to this point, and the matchup for Minnesota doesn't bode well. So even though the 3 points on the road feels a little trappy, I'm still happy to take that and not even need to touch it. I would parlay it, but I wouldn't even need to tease this game in any way, fashion to feel good about it. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this slate and then talk Heat and Pacers.
I think it's this Miami Heat, which is that awkward grammar thing you have to use when you talk about the Heat or Magic. I hate as a writer, but anyway, here we go. Heat minus 3.5 at the Pacers. That is the game we're talking here. Tons of other games to look at. I'll run through them quick. Knicks plus 2.5 at Sixers. Cavs minus 6 at the Pistons. The Nets plus 3 at Wizards. Bulls plus 7 at the Celtics. The Clippers minus 4.5 at Spurs. Hornets plus 11 at Grizz. Warriors on a back-to-back are plus 4 at the Pelicans. The Raptors plus 3.5 at the Mavs. They're gaining a little steam after crushing their last 2 opponents. The Blazers plus 11 at the Suns. We'll see if Dame gets back for that one. The other game we break down, Bucks are minus 3.5 at Wolves. Gobert and Ant Edwards questionable for that one. And then we cap things off with Utah plus 2.5 at the Lakers, who are trying to get on track here. So Jimmy Butler's out with a hip issue. I think, and Bam is questionable with knee soreness. And normally, we like to say stars out, bets up. I don't think Bam really qualifies in that sense as being in any way an overrated piece of the team or as a dispensable piece of the team. So full disclaimer, this take becomes cold if Bam is ruled out, and I would not get your money down on Miami, but look, they did beat Indiana twice without Bam and Jimmy last December, and they beat them by an average of 19 points per game. Even the game they've lost in their last 4 meetings against Indiana, Tyler Hero went off for 30 points on 12 for 28, and he's only gotten better since then. In that loss, it was one of the first games of the season. We're a little bit beyond that at this point. Miami sort of hit that second gear when Jimmy said, after some road losses, we're still winning the title. And then they came home and handled business. Now they're in Indiana, but not the toughest place for them to play. Like I said, they've won 3 of their last 4 and covered in those against the Pacers. And in that loss, Lowry was out. Jimmy shot 7 for 22 from the floor. So it's not like he's been crushing the Pacers with his offense. Lowry a little healthier at this point in the season. He's 6th in total minutes in the season, interestingly. But this is really more about the Heat defense, and that's why I think we need Bam in there. But what they've been able to do this season, it's pretty much the norm against really, really good competition. I mean, I guess you'd say their weakest games have been against the Kings twice, and that's a tough offensive team. They played the Warriors twice, the Raptors twice, Blazers, Celtics, Bulls, and the Pacers have played no one. Like literally awful teams, including the Nets twice, who are the easiest team to score on. And then they actually kind of got shut down the stretch by those Nets in that immediate rematch. Their offense, when you look at it, I mean, they're 3rd in 3-pointers and 3rd fast break points and 4th in assist to field goal ratio, but not scoring in the paint. Miami is just going to limit all those things. I mean, you're not getting easy threes. You're not getting easy kickouts against Miami. You're not going to beat them in transition, even without Jimmy out there. And sure enough, in this matchup, the Pacers, 97 points per game, shot under 29% from 3. in those last 4 against Miami. I mean, this is a team that scores 118 on the year, and if they're getting closer to 98, there is no path to victory. I'm sorry, their defense is not going to be good enough, even without Jimmy Butler, to hold down Miami and win this game. So, I mean, that's pretty much the logic here, is that Miami's going to be able to hold them in check, that they've faced a much tougher schedule, and that the line is a little bit skewed by those results combined with the fact that Jimmy Butler's out.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, I mean, once again, though, just if Bam plays, but Bam's got to play. It's not just the defense; it's the rebounding. Miami, not a good rebounding team this season. Also, without Omar Yurt's season, Yurt 7, and it's not going to be Yurt's season tonight.
They would Heisman though.
Yeah, maybe. And even, don't be fooled by Nikola Jovic, not Jokic. Obviously, hopefully you didn't fall for that in fantasy, but Jovic is not also playing tonight. I mean, look, he's a big small forward, big power forward, small forward, and occasional small ball center. So like really, yeah, they're going to be hurting for rebounding. It's why it's what we've talked about with Indiana when we've talked about them this season. And the reason that we've picked them a couple times to cover humongous spreads against a team like, say, the Brooklyn Nets, is they're the second best rebounding team in the league right now, which is wild to continue to see. Is Indiana. Miami's all the way down in the bottom 10 right now. And look, for Miami, before anybody hits the panic button, I mean, I did take under roughly like 51.5 wins for them to start the season, only because they didn't do enough to me to improve their roster compared to other teams. It's just that simple, just compared to the top of the East. And we're seeing that play out with Donovan Mitchell and the way the Cavs look right now as an example of adding something to your roster to that, was lacking last season. And they've shored that up. And now they've got one loss and are atop the East right behind Milwaukee. Miami, meanwhile, is still getting it back together. And yes, they've won 2 in a row. But pause on any sort of hypothesis or prediction right now for Miami and the rest of their season I'm not going to continue on with it, because I need to see a little bit more compared. Like the teams that they played, they basically just played playoff round after playoff round this season, where they've only had like a few games that you could say, I mean, like you said, Sac on the road for them. Not a fun game on the back-to-back of a road trip against Golden State the night before, where they lost after getting Steph Curried in the third and fourth quarter, playing Portland a couple nights before that. So like that, all that stuff, playing Toronto twice in a row, Boston and Chicago to open the season. Like I said, those are all playoff teams. Maybe Chicago failed to make it, but like they're all going to be teams that are close, 35 to 50 win teams. So like I need to see what they do in situations like tonight, essentially. I wish that we were getting some Jimmy stuff, but because to me, like this team goes on offense as Jimmy goes, right? And we talk about him being sort of a facilitator at this point, a little bit more of a guy with his hands on the ball to start, which is what I think they're going to be missing tonight, because that's not really what Kyle Lowry's game is going to be anymore. We'll see how they incorporate Hero. I do think if they're going to put him in the starting lineup and keep him there as they have been, and then tonight he's going to continue to get those numbers, you got to feel pretty good about it. I'm still not seeing too many props, but to be honest, dude, like with this game, I'm really just looking at props anyway. I really just want to see who's playing for Miami, and then just go for it. If Bam is playing, got to get in there with him and probably some rebounds as well and some props. And if he's not, and even if he is, I still kind of want to see what Tyler Heroes are, because like you said, if it's going to be anywhere in the low 20s for Hero, I can't see him getting less than like roughly 25 points in this game, when we're talking about an Indiana team that's still I think the third worst defensive rating in the league, on top of giving up an incredibly high percentage from 3 to their opponents. So like all these things is exactly what Miami wants to do on offense. They just need at least Bam there to anchor that defense and rebounding before I feel really comfortable about them. And also I already feel really comfortable about Tyler Hero props, basically.
Yeah, you said Jimmy's got to initiate the offense. You forgot about the 6th man of the year, who's now starting and is just a walking bucket. And yeah,
the bucket though, is he going to be able to control their offense like a point guard is all I'm wondering.
Well, Lowry's out there too, right? And if those two guys are who you're leaning on, you got to like the fact that Indiana's dead last in opponent 3-point percentage, right?
Yeah.
Spreading it out. We should mention the rest discrepancy here. Like we said, Miami was on the road. Now they were home, but this is the third game in 4 nights for them. And Indiana's been off that entire time since Monday. But as a young team, sometimes that works against you. And last year with extra rest, they went 4-10 against the spread. So that's not really where I go in terms of worrying about Miami. They're also 4-15 straight up when they're home underdogs. And they're not necessarily trying to win this year, right? I mean, we've seen some shady things in terms of pulling Halliburton early in the game, in terms of Miles Turner not being listed on the injury report, but just sometimes not playing.
Not
Like,
playing.
we have no
Yeah.
idea if he's going to play tonight or how much he's going
True.
to play. They have other bigs out there, but like, he's absolutely essential if you're going to match up with Bam. In Miami, it's you got to lean on Eric Spoelstra, voted by the GM survey as the best coach in the league. And his scheme's going to be good. I mean, they have next man up coming in, Max Strus. Don't sleep on him. And they just handled business on the road, 29-19 against the spread last season. I would like to just bank on them getting right here after such a tough schedule to open the season, and Indiana just not necessarily being a team that's going to fight you down the stretch and doesn't have a good crunch time offense. Like, I come back to how that last game ended against the Nets. It never really seemed like they had a chance to win, right? And you get into a close game with Miami in crunch time, it's going to be really hard for this team to score.
Yep. No, and that's really true. I think, you look at the rosters without Bam and Jimmy, it's a lot closer. It's a lot closer to a pick 'em than 4 points once you take Bam out of that lineup as well, right? You keep Bam in there, and these rosters right next to each other. Yes, I think that it's still, you still favor Miami, but you take Bam out, and you butt them up next to each other. It's just much too close at that point. I just think it really does level the playing field of picking the props, because now we know who's getting the ball and who should be receiving the most attention on each of these squads. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into our first prop of tonight.
Yeah, 3-1 last night, or 2-2, depending what you took for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But we did hit the lead prop. We hit this guy on Wednesday, as you mentioned with Mo, Bradley Beal, who was at 20.5 points, just still pretty low, and he got 29 against the Sixers. Now he's at 21.5, and I didn't see a price I liked, though, on DraftKings, but you can go up to 22.5 at FanDuel and get a good price, or you can find a good price at BetMGM for 21.5. In any case, I mean, I think we're looking at about 25 here. I mean, against the Brooklyn Nets, right? The 30th defensive rating, allow the 5th most points per game to shooting guards, 26 points. They allow the 4th most free throw attempts, the 2nd most threes. Plus 105 for Bradley to just hit 2 threes. Yeah, I mean, he just hasn't been taking them lately, but we've seen his usage rate ramp up with Monte Morris in that lineup, and 28% usage his last 2 games, combined for 49 points, despite shooting pretty poorly in the game before that Sixers game. And you look at his last 4 against the Nets, he shot poorly. 44% from the floor, 32% from 3, but still 24 points per game, still a 29% usage rate. It's really, like we said on Wednesday, it's just a strange thing where I don't understand why this guy isn't attacking anymore. But he does ramp up and play the Nets. I mean, you look at before those last 4 games, like the 2019 season, I mean, he's getting like 35 a game against the Nets, and that was back when they were actually like a feisty team and not just an absolute dumpster fire, which is what we've seen. I mean, so everybody should be ramped up to face this team, should be licking their chops at getting their numbers. And so I think Beal shouldn't have much problem getting 22 to 25, if not going off and getting into a real duel with Durant.
Yeah. Yeah, to be clear, this is the one I think I'm definitely going to bet on. I feel much more comfortable about this one. Like, not that I don't like our other 3. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel way better about this one than any. I think it's a really nice lock for tonight, for Beal to get close, like you said, 25 plus tonight in a game where, I mean, their offense is kind of limited, right? There's not that much firepower on this team outside of Bradley right now. I know, Kuz is doing his thing still, but it's he's off ball, and obviously KP, his offense is still super reliant on the guards that he has playing with him. So Bradley going to have the ball in his hands, going to have the usage rate, and he's back to Bradley Beal status in a way that he's shooting the ball better than he has. And so I think he's still content to take that and make sure he doesn't get hurt, as he has the last couple of seasons. So I'm going to move on to another really good shooting guard and a guy who took another step forward this year, Desmond Bane. But he's doing it all over the floor, right? We already knew what he was as a shooter, but we're seeing what he can do a little bit more as a playmaker. The assists have gone up for him this season, as has the usage. He's clearly sort of the 1A to Ja's 1A at this point. I mean, this is a Scotty Michael kind of situation where you can say one guy's clearly better than the other, but you can also say neither of them are as good without each other. And this team certainly needs both of them. So, this year Bane's averaging 25 a game with an 125 individual offensive rating, just playing, super well each and every game, even when Ja's on the floor. I hope I mentioned the 29.5 points, rebounds, and assists, I should say. I think we're going over on that for him tonight. We're getting 30 points, rebounds, and assists combined. He's playing the Hornets, right? And it's a Hornets team who actually, if you look at their defensive rating, it's 13th. They played a bit better, but they're still playing at the 7th fastest pace in the league, and still allowing their opponents to do a ton in transition as well. I mean, still giving up more than 114 points a game. So I think with Bane's usage rate at 27%, and Ja's obviously a bit higher at about 36, only below Mr. Antetokounmpo and Doncic right now for highest usage rates in the league. But Bane's still just getting the ball the second, right after this Ja is at 27%. So with the Hornets unable to really do much outside in transition, and the fact that the Grizzlies are going to continue to play at that pace, scoring in the top 10 in fast break points per game, I think there's plenty of reason to like Ja, or Bane rather, as his props are still too low essentially so far.
Yeah, definitely too low when he's averaging 34 PRA on the season. And yeah, you said to me, well, but Ja's back after Bane dropped 32 without Ja. It doesn't matter. These guys, I mean, the Grizzlies are scoring 117, and these guys are combining for 54, 55 of those points per game. I mean, they are just absolutely your turn, my turn, turned into a star duo. Bane just continues to add to his game, and even with Ja on the floor, that's actually, he averages 34 with Ja in 6 games. The one game without Ja, he got 40 PRA. He had 32 points. So, I mean, against the Hornets, who really their defensive rating is probably skewed by playing some bad teams and getting fortunate on a lot of shots, that they continue to give up plenty of open shots. I like the over here. I mean, Memphis is 29th in defensive rating right now.
Yeah.
Only 227 is the total. So I think you can take the over, and you can take some props on both sides here. Taking the under, though, out in LA, Jordan Clarkson, 28.5 PRA. Are you kidding me with this? I mean, he got over it against Dallas and Memphis, who, like I just mentioned, can't protect the rim right now. In 2 of his last 3, he got over that. Otherwise, that is just not happening here on a Utah team that's spreading it out and having 7 guys in double figures usually most of the time. And the Lakers, look, you say what you want about their offense, their defense hasn't gone anywhere. They're 3rd in defensive rating. They allow the 8th lowest percentage inside the arc and 6th lowest outside the arc. And in his last 3 against the Lakers, 12.5 points, 1.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists. So 28.5 PRA. Are we counting on Jordan Clarkson to drop 25 on this team? Absolutely not. I mean, just 23.5 points and rebounds. I would go under that as well. I don't think the assists will be there. This is just another incorrect line set by some of the books, in my opinion. The Lakers should be able to hound him. I think it's just, they've kind of flipped the culture a little bit. I mean, the energy is shifting, barely starting to. And Westbrook is accepting his role off the bench. And if he's going to be hounding Clarkson, if he's actually engaged in playing defense, it's going to be much harder for him to find production against this team.
Yeah. That's fair. I think, some of the thought process is who's matching up against specifically Jordan Clarkson if he's playing on the second unit. Obviously, that first unit's definitely kept its defense up, and an AD being on the floor is always going to help at least your defense from that standpoint, despite how poorly he may or may not be shooting at times. So, yeah, there's a bit of an uptick in LA, but the defense hasn't really gone anywhere, like you said. So let's finish things up here, Nate, with an over on Mr. Nikola Vucevic. I think I was actually looking at some of those props in this game tonight with him against the Celtics, going, maybe there's some unders actually that I'd like to take here. If some value might be over inflated on some of these guys, with actually a decently sized total for these two teams tonight. Where the Celtics have been a little bit worse on defense, to be honest. So, I mean, 223.5, it's not huge. But I do think it's a little bit, low because of the fact that the Celtics have not been playing that good of defense. And Vooch is somebody that, at this point, you look at what he's done against the Celtics in his last 5 versus them, dude, and it's the rebounds that really stand out to you. 17.5 points per game, very good for him right now, but 12 boards as well in that time frame, which is actually what his rebounds prop alone is at 11.5 tonight. But Boston, not surprisingly, there's no Robert Williams III in there. Papa Al is really their main and only defensive presence down low, and so you're talking about a team that's giving up in Boston the fourth most rebounds per game to centers. They're very, very bad right now in defensive rebounding rate, second worst, and also giving up middle of the pack, but slightly worse than middle of the pack in terms of giving up offensive rebounds per game as well. So for Vooch, his last three alone, regardless of who he's playing this season, he's averaging 17 boards in 33 minutes a game. Add 15 points to that. So his rebounds and points tonight is 27.5. That's plus money on DK though. I kind of like that right there. The rebounds and assists as well, 14.5. He's got a few more assists this season in certain games, as he's also clearly square. When he's squaring up to the when he's back to the basket, one of the better passers from that position in the league as well, and he's definitely taken advantage of that this season with a few more slashers, guys like Dosunmu as well, also slashing to the basket, and obviously Derrick Jones Jr. getting a few more minutes as well when in that second unit that Vooch is playing with. So plenty of reason to like him with the rebounds tonight in any way, in any capacity, whether you go for the points adding to that or the assists.
Yeah, I mean, you might worry about the scoring with Vooch, but 14.5 rebounds and assists is plus money. And like you said, averaging 12 boards, about 5 assists against the Celtics too. And he had 23 rebounds when they played earlier this season. I mean, he just boards up at an incredible rate, and 17 rebounds per game in his last 3, no matter who he's faced. And the Celtics don't have much down low. Right now, their defense is actually really underachieving without Rob Williams.
Yeah, 100%. And the three teams that they played, I mean, Charlotte and Brooklyn were definitely two of those two teams right there already, right, without much defense down low, which is also what you're expecting from the Celtics without Rob Will, probably defensive player of the year last season. Just finish on that note. So that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. No means I didn't mean to take shots at Marcus Smart's Defensive Player of the Year award last year, but do make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We will be back with you each and every weekday of this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.